Alrighty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving online information entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am super excited to welcome my new friend, Rich Goldstein, today. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks so much, Heather. It's great to be here.
It's so good to have you here. And this is a conversation I've not yet had on the podcast. So I'm super happy about this. For those of you that don't know Rich, the very brief introduction is that Rich works with entrepreneurs to help them protect their ideas, products, and brands with patents and trademarks. Over the past 28 years, he has obtained more than 2,000 patents for his clients. Rich is the host of the Innovations and Breakthroughs podcast and is the author of the Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent, published by the American Bar Association. Woohoo, there it is. For those of you not watching, yep, just held it up. It's a good looking book, Rich. I like the colors. Not too far off from my old branding. That's my, yeah, if
Yep. I owe the branding to the American Bar Association, though. They came up with it. Nothing to do with me.
That's
But
right. It's good. It
yeah, it
instills
works.
lots of confidence. Yeah,
Yeah.
it works. So Rich and I were connected through a mutual acquaintance, and I was an immediate fan. Rich, I would love for you to share your story, because I know we've got some overlaps between our stories, right? And we talked a little on your podcast. And if you're listening, you definitely need to pop over and listen to Rich's podcast, Innovations and Breakthroughs, where he talks with entrepreneurs about entrepreneurship, and it's awesome. But Rich, will you share with us a little bit about your own journey, especially early on in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's like what to zone in on, but
Right.
the thing that occurs to me is that I was um, studying electrical engineering, and I thought I was
Mhm.
going to become an electrical engineer until I learned that the reality of being an engineer is that you don't get to work on lots of different cool things all the time. You get to work on one project for years at a time, and not even like
Mm.
designing some cool thing, but designing some piece of a piece of that maybe cool thing. And if you're working in the aeronautics industry, you're not designing an airplane, you're designing the control system for the ventilation button, above your seat. And then you work on that for 5 years.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
so-
What's cracking me up about this is I was talking to a neighbor the other day. We had some neighbors move in actually right before the pandemic. So the timing was really bad because we wanted to get to know them, and then we were all in lockdown. And so we're actually just now getting to know them a bit better. And I was asking her about her husband's work, and he's an engineer, and she was like, and she kind of like held up, like did the motion you just did. It's this little thing on a board, and I
right.
don't even, she's like, I actually don't even know how to describe it. I thought
Yeah.
that
No, exactly. That's what
that's
they
in
do. They're
line
like,
with my idea of what an electrical engineer would
yeah,
do,
they
right?
give you your constraints. You're like, okay, so this system is going to have this set of inputs. This is what the power source is. It needs to operate within this temperature range. And like you get your design constraints, and then it's like, okay, build what's inside of that black box right there. And work on it for 5 years. So I learned this while I was studying electrical engineering, and I said, that's just not for me. And so what I ended up doing was, well, I learned about a couple of different career paths, and one of them was to become a patent lawyer, where essentially you need to have an engineering background and then go to law school. And that's just what I did. And I started my own law firm right out of law school. As like that's where our stories
Yes, I
overlap.
this is the part that I wanted to hear.
Right. And essentially now and for the past 28 years, I get to work on something different every day.
Yeah, I bet that piece of you that hated the engineering path once you learned what it was loves this get to work on something new every day approach, right?
And that piece of me would be called the ADD part of me.
So good. Well, I think as an entrepreneur, that part is required, isn't it?
Yes. I mean,
It's like
it,
essential operating
it,
equipment.
yeah, I would say it's pretty funny. That 90% of my entrepreneur friends are as ADD as I am.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Right.
I mean,
And
I think it's kind of the root to a lot of people's creativity.
mm,
It's kind of the thing that, and you might say it has you move from topic to topic, but it's also the thing that has you connect things that was seemingly unrelated before. And to me, that's what
mm,
creativity is connecting things in a way that is a bit unexpected.
yes.
And so that's kind of how my brain works.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talk to us just for a minute because I think there are parallels between your story, even in launching your practice, right?
Yes.
Right out of law school, and what a lot of entrepreneurs face in beginning a business. Will you share a few of the strategies that you used in building your practice?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's like the one strategy was that um while I was still in law school, getting ready to graduate, I launched a magazine for inventors. So essentially it was a 32-page magazine where I had articles that explained how you go about protecting something, and even how you go
Mm.
about pursuing a new product idea, getting it prototyped and manufactured, interviews with other inventors, and I advertised my law firm in the magazine, like took the back cover ad for me. So so essentially I was getting this magazine out to people that were, essentially potential clients,
Yeah.
and it led to the first crop of business. It was really the first channel I created
Mhm.
for getting new business.
Right.
And
This
so
was pre-internet, right?
yeah, so pre-internet. So you could say I was doing content marketing in print form back in the 90s.
And I love that you just skipped the like, how can I advertise in other people's stuff? And like you just created the magazine.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the first thing I did. But then I did advertise in other people's stuff in the sense that I also took an ad in the yellow pages,
Mm,
um, which, under patent attorneys, I kind of took the biggest ad of in that category for patent attorneys. And then like I sought to do it in other areas as well. If you remember Yellow
mhm.
Pages, if anyone here listening remembers Yellow Pages,
I
they were
do.
divided by geographic area. Like you might have one so you're in the Seattle area, right? So
Mhm.
there could have been a Seattle book and then like a one in Bellevue or in the other, and they were broken up into different books. So I kind of did that around New York. I was in the Staten Island book, the Brooklyn book, the Queens book, the Manhattan Yellow Pages, and such. And then I also opened offices in California, in Los Angeles, and San Francisco, and I had all the different yellow page books in those areas. I took the biggest ad on the patent attorneys, and
Mm.
that's kind of how I got things rolling.
Talk to us also about what it took for you to build out, because I know you now lead a team of people, what it took to build out, right, your team and your business and opening multiple offices.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess there's a lot of levels to that of like kind of
Mhm.
like what it took. I mean, to some extent, legal business is not the easiest business to scale.
Yeah.
'Cause it's really built on like when if you start out as a sole practitioner, as an attorney with his or her own practice, um, you build a clientele based upon personal relationships with your clients.
Right.
And so then how do you move from that to
Right.
now hiring someone who's going to then be doing some of the work? And then, okay, are they going to be working with the client, or are you going to be working with the client and then communicating everything to this other attorney of what's
Right.
needed, and then they give it back to you? Well, like how you work that dynamic, there's just so much to it.
Oh,
uh, and
you've
then
just
even in traditional law firms, like the structure
mhm.
where they have associates, which are hired, and then partners, which then presumably are the ones bringing the clients in. There's a lot to figure out there.
There's a
And it's,
lot to it. It is
yeah,
a complex model. But just, I mean, even that initial description of like people connect with you, you're the expert, right? You're the service provider. How do you then shift it to like who delivers what and who establishes the relationship or continues the relationship. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, on top of
And
the
then quality
fundamentals.
control is like, if you're
Mhm.
having other people work on it, it's not like you're doing something which is um like mechanical, in the sense
Mhm.
that like they just follow the process.
Just plug
Like,
somebody into the assembly line. Yeah.
yeah, there's judgment involved in every step of the way. There's judgment involved in like what you decide to do. Then there's judgment along the way, and even in that thing that you decide that you're doing for the client.
Mm,
So it's hiring people that can exercise judgment in a similar way that you would, that I would,
yeah.
is
Yeah.
not easy. So
Not
yeah, I mean,
easy.
asking me how I grew the practice, I've had different iterations of my practices.
Yeah.
I've over the years, I've had times where I expanded to a bigger team, and then brought it back down to a smaller team, or even just me
Mm,
for a number of years. And then I had a bigger team again, and then it was just me again. So it's, it's kind of like it's a work in progress.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and running a business like an organism, right? There are certain things about it that, like, if you have it going great, can be healthy and functional, and then there can be certain levels of dysfunction that come in, right, through no fault of your own, and then you're dealing with something that's dysfunctional when you've got people working together. Were there
Yeah.
any parts of it that were, like, stand out as kind of highlights, like really enjoyable parts of the journey?
Mm. Um, yeah, I mean, I should like a lot of it, I'd say is enjoyable.
Mm,
And
mhm.
there's a lot of um kind of like, I don't know, can I cuss on this?
Yeah, you totally can.
No, there's like the entrepreneur's journey. There's an artist, it's called Gaping Void, where they do these really interesting like art prints of different things that have to do with the entrepreneur journey. But my favorite one
Mhm.
is a series of frames, and it says like, literally, it says the entrepreneur's journey. It says, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, hell yeah, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, hell yeah.
Right.
So
Oh,
so yeah, and I actually didn't say hell yeah, but I'll keep it
right,
a little
I
bit. Yeah,
understand,
yeah.
totally.
But yeah, like that's literally it, right? It's like
Yeah.
there are these great moments, and in between there are a lot of like, oh my God, what did I get myself into moments? And
How have you in the past gotten through those moments, right? The "What did I get myself into?"
yeah, I mean, I think it's just important to remember who you are, who, like, in this case, who I
Mhm.
am, and that, and a lot of times just to remember how many times I've been in a place like that, where it just
Mm,
seemed like pretty lousy, you know?
yeah.
I mean, over the years, I can't even count on all my fingers and all my toes how many times I've been, oh my God, I got payroll this week. Like,
Mm,
something's got
yeah,
to come together to
yeah.
make this work. And it just kind of always has, right? It's like
Mhm.
sometimes never comfortable, but yeah, I mean, one of the things is just remembering that, like, you know, I've kind of, in a sense, been here before, no
Yeah,
matter how bleak it
yeah.
seems in the moment.
Well, and it's interesting as you talk about that. What is it about entrepreneurs that you think, because you're an entrepreneur, clearly. You're an attorney and an entrepreneur, but what is it about entrepreneurs that makes them different from the average individual when it comes to things like risk tolerance?
Yeah, I mean, I almost think that begs the question. I think the difference is risk tolerance, right? It's like,
Mm,
how and why that they are that way, I'm not sure, but I think the thing that really sets us apart, is just that we're willing to tolerate the risk. And like
mm,
the opposite, the flip side of having that risk, right, is having a stable job with a stable salary. And
mm,
I can't say that like I never think of, hey, wouldn't it be cool to just have a job and collect a salary, like, especially in those months, and I'm sure you know what I mean, those months when like it's like I worked really hard, but I actually put money into the business. I didn't make any money, right?
Right.
Like I worked my butt off, and to, to clients, I think they often think like they're paying us what X thousands of dollars to do something, and they're like, oh yeah, it's like they feel like as if you put it in your pocket, as
Mm,
opposed to like it went to pay a whole bunch of expenses, and maybe you didn't get paid at all,
yeah.
like for doing the project, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. No, it's so true. Well, it's interesting that whole like risk tolerance. And I was listening to a really interesting discussion on a podcast the other day, and it was actually reflecting back on some Aristotle teachings around the the place of true success is actually in the mean, right? Some people become so risk averse that they live over here. Some people are so risk tolerant that they live over here. And somehow you've got to be able to handle both sides, but live somewhere in the middle to actually create success. And I think it is interesting to observe that continuum. You meet certain personalities where you're like, oh, I can see where they are on the risk tolerance scale, right? And even statistics around longevity, like really interesting things that all relate actually to this topic. It's
yeah,
fascinating.
no, it's really interesting, and I think a lot of
Mhm.
entrepreneurs have a lot of stuff that I don't have, right? Like I've got a friend who like keeps going straight through the finish line. Well, maybe I've given up. Like I used to be involved
Mm.
in running an organization that did weekend courses, and then like, you know, it was we were headed into the weekend and it was like under enrolled, and like I had this friend who's still calling people like 11 o'clock at night to
The
get
night
someone to show up
before.
at this course that they never heard of the following morning at 8 a.m. And it's like I like, to me, like I gave up like days ago. I'm like, I'm not calling anyone about like, you know going to do a course this weekend. Like it's just not something about it. Like I don't have that gene, right? I don't have
Right.
that characteristic. But like, to him it's like, yeah, no, until 9 a.m. like I'm gonna keep going. Good for you. Like I don't
Yeah.
have that. So I mean, there are some entrepreneurs that are kind of like, like really have got the stuff. I've got
Mhm.
some of the stuff.
So, yeah. Well, and really everything is a continuum, right? And you think about different personality traits and even around, motivation, what motivates us to do certain things. And I think, we're all somewhere on each of the continuums. And
Mhm.
And being somewhere like on that end of the continuum is also going to have its drawbacks in regards to other of our values and the way that they're expressed in our work or our life. So it is so fascinating to watch where people really show up and what that's in regards to. But I do think there is something that makes most entrepreneurs really pretty unique, when you look at the population as a whole, because statistic wise, I think less than 10% of people ever become entrepreneurs and are entrepreneurial, right? So there is something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think though a big part of it too is confidence, right? Like
Mm,
so there's risk tolerance, but there's also confidence, because like I could tell you, like for myself, like how far I'm willing to go, and how like even the actions I take is a function of confidence. Like when I'm
uh-huh.
feeling really confident, I'll do lots of things, and I'll make, judgment calls about stuff. When I'm
Mm.
not feeling very confident, I kind of don't feel like taking any old action. Like even deciding whether my office door should be open or closed, I'm just kind of like, I don't even know. Like,
Oh, I
like,
could so
like something really simple
relate.
like that.
Yeah,
Like
it's
I kind of leave it in the middle, between open and closed. I don't know,
oh my
but
gosh, is
yeah,
that
I
confidence or is it just decision fatigue, right?
no, but yeah, I guess that's part of it. But I think confidence and decisiveness, and
Yeah.
action kind of go together in a certain way.
Yeah, totally. What has been your favorite part about working with entrepreneurs?
It is, well, I mean, I love value. Like value is one of
Mhm.
my favorite things. Um, seeing where there's value, and providing value.
Mm,
um like that's exciting to me, that's fun for me. um and so like with entrepreneurs, you typically can see where the value exactly is. So if I was working with big corporations and just working on their patent portfolio, and like it's like the actions I take are kind of so I don't want to say disconnected, but it's so such a tenuous connection. Like it's like if I was able to get the patent for Ford Motor Company, let's say,
mm,
like is are you going to feel a ripple in that pond in any way? Like probably not. It's like in that
mhm.
ocean, right? Are you going to
Yeah.
notice a difference? So there's not a lot of like connection to the value there. But when you're working with entrepreneurs, there's just an
Mm,
immediate connection to the value, especially if you're tuned into what their goals are, what they're seeking to accomplish, and there's a way in which you connect the work that you're doing with what they're
mhm,
looking to accomplish. So, like,
mhm.
I think that's my favorite part of working with entrepreneurs is just being closely in touch with value creation.
Mm. Yeah, I love that so much. Most of us, regardless of what we're doing, right, we're in the business of solving problems and bringing some sort of value to our clients. And yet, I am really fascinated in the legal industry, particularly how disconnected as a whole we've been actually to this topic that you're talking about right now,
Yep.
because the legal model, I think, would look really different if we had a whole industry of people tuned into this question of like, what is the value that I'm bringing? I think we'd
Yeah.
deliver our services differently. We'd have a really different looking model set up,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we don't. Some of us, I think, have done a better job than others trying to look at that question of value and create unique value. Um, the I want to start because for people that are listening, right? We haven't had a conversation yet on the podcast about patents. Let's
Hmm.
like pretend you're talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about patents, and let's just start with what are they? Who needs them, right? Give us a kind of an introduction to patents.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and like, and I'll try to not make it boring too, because I could just picture a lot of patent attorneys like, well, a patent is a grant of rights. It's a bundle of rights, and it's the roots are based in the constitutional Article 1, Section 8. No, so yeah, I mean, let's think of it this way, and then like this is the big confusion people often have between patents
Mhm,
and trademarks and such. And so, like, if you're talking about a product, you're talking about what makes a product different
mhm,
than other products, makes it functionally different, structurally different, different in
mhm,
the design, then that's what a patent would typically protect.
mhm,
If you're talking about the name of a product, the branding of a product, and the logo, slogan, that's all trademarks. Like the way in
right.
which you identify a product in the marketplace, say that, oh, that's a Nike sneaker,
Yep.
or that's a Coca-Cola soft drink, that's trademarks. And
Yep.
I can't possibly pretend that you don't know anything about this, because I know you know a lot about that in particular. But just for everyone else, just to distinguish the two,
Right.
people
No,
often
this
get
is
confused
good
between them.
because yes, people do often get confused. And so I think it is an important distinction.
Yeah, and so like if you're talking about a product and what makes a product different, then you're talking about a patent typically.
Mm,
And like two types of patents, utility patent and design patent. Design patent is really just about the ornamental appearance of
mm,
something, where utility patent is what you typically think of when you think of
mm,
a patent. You think of someone in their garage inventing something to improve upon something that existed before. So you're making something that's structurally different so
mhm.
that it works better.
Functional. Yes.
Yeah, structurally different for a functional purpose.
Mm,
That's what a utility patent is about. And
mm,
that's typically what most people are um, thinking of when they're thinking of patenting their inventions. They're thinking of getting utility patent, which I happen to have one that just came in the mail.
It was
So
so
that,
pretty, right? I've
yeah,
not seen one of those, so that's cool.
yeah, they revised the actual cover design of it. I want to say about um, maybe 2.5 years ago.
Oh, nice. Yeah, for those that are not
And
looking, you'll have to pop over to the video, but it's like a gold seal and gold lettering and like has a, United States of America down the side. It's very cool.
yep, gold seal, gold lettering, being held up by Goldstein.
There you
It's a dad
go.
joke.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it looks like the patent office is at least getting one thing right, right? That the end culmination of that, which I know to be a
Right.
very complex, technical, highly technical process, right?
Yep.
You get something. The USPTO just did away with actually sending out any physical certificates for a trademark, right? You just get a
Right.
digital thing now.
Yeah.
That, you know,
So at least they're still sending out the patent certificate.
right.
And But yeah, so then just essentially then utility patent is what you typically think of when you apply for a
Hmm.
patent. The path toward getting it involves applying for a patent. So
Yeah.
creating a patent application. Patent application, it's not like a job application. It's not like a form you fill out. It's more like a 30-page technical document with drawings and description that explain what the invention is, how it's different from things that have been done before, and really
Mhm.
sets the stage for convincing the patent office to grant you a patent. And once you file that, it gets reviewed by an examiner, kind of similar to the trademark side that you work with all the time. It gets assigned to an examiner who reviews it. They may accept it or reject it. If they reject it, then we have an opportunity to respond and explain why they should have approved it. And then
Mhm.
once they do approve it, then you will get the patent issued as a U.S. patent. And an issued United States patent lasts for 20 years from when you initially filed.
Mm. And how long does that process take, kind of start to finish, right? Assuming that somebody is working with a patent attorney who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, it typically takes a couple of years,
Hmm.
start to finish. And another important thing to know is that once you file the application, it's considered patent pending,
Hmm.
which really means that your priority is protected toward getting the patent, so that if someone filed
Something
the
else
next
that
day,
looks like
then
that.
you would be ahead of them, right? If
Mm.
someone else filed for the same invention after you would be ahead of them.
Right.
So patent pending means you've established your priority, and then ultimately it needs to get reviewed and approved to be able to stop other people from making, using, or selling the invention. That's
Yeah.
what the patent is for. So being patent pending means that no one's going to step ahead of you, so you're
Mm.
protected in a certain way. But to actually stop people from making, using, or selling the invention, it needs to be reviewed, approved, and issued.
Yeah. I assume even that patent pending though is a pretty big deal to get people there, because and maybe you can share with us, have you seen examples where, somebody delayed or thought about getting it? And, I know like in the trademark world, this happens frequently,
Yep.
right? People think, oh, maybe I have a little time, or they do a few Google searches and they don't see anything else that looks like what they're doing. And they think, I'll just sit on this for a little bit until I have the budget for it or
Yep.
whatever. Is it the
Yes.
same in the patent world? I mean, is it a
Yeah.
race?
Well,
Is it a
there's
race
two
to this?
really important things there. First, I'm glad you asked the
Mhm.
question. And so, first of all, yes, I mean it does happen quite frequently that people miss out by
Mhm.
getting to the patent office a little late. And when I say miss out, what I'm saying is that someone else beats them to it.
Yeah.
But more frequently, the issue is that they disclose it publicly, and once a year goes by from the time that it's publicly disclosed, which means essentially putting it on sale or it's on a
Mhm.
website or something like that. If a year goes by, then it's too late to ever apply for a patent.
Ooh,
Even if no one
ouch.
else puts in
Oof.
a patent application, if you're not up against anyone else or competing with anyone else, it's just your own action will prevent you from getting a patent if a year goes by from the time you publicly disclose it.
Yeah,
And
that seems like really important information for people to know,
really
right?
important
Because in
information.
the trademark world, that would preclude a huge majority of people from
Yeah.
even getting a
In the trademark world,
trademark.
it's different, right? In the trademark world, it's like
Right.
you could have like a mom and pop manufacturing business
Mm.
that's going on for 20 years, and then and then like the daughter who takes over the business realizes like, oh, we never applied for a trademark.
We should
Okay,
get
let's
that.
apply for a trademark. As long
Yeah.
as no one else has really gotten into that arena and kind of confused the situation around that mark, 20 years can go by, 40 years can go by, and
Yeah.
and you can still apply for a trademark. Not true with patents. And
Yeah.
so many entrepreneurs get jammed up over this.
Ugh,
And
well, I can see why. I can see
Yeah.
why. And especially when you think about the early entrepreneurship path that people walk, where they're just trying to figure it out and get things moving and build something, it can be challenging for them to handle all the pieces the right way.
Well, you're exactly right, and it makes total sense. It's actually a very, very reasonable thing to like be launching a product and look at all of the different things that you could spend money on to make that launch successful. And among those is like you look at patenting and you say, well, maybe it's expensive. Maybe I'll do it later. I'll come back around to it. And I just throughout my career, I've seen it too many times where someone kind of came to me and they said, well, we've got this product, it's doing really well, we want to protect it, we don't care what it costs, we're just ready to do it. And I'm like, that's cool, a client who doesn't care what it costs, right? But I have to ask the possibly regrettable question of like, well, okay, how long have you been selling it?
Yeah.
I said, well, we've been selling it for 2.5 years and like blah blah blah, and it's like people are getting ready to copy it and we need to sorry to
Boom.
tell you, but
Yeah.
it's too late. You can't, because after a year, in the United States, you can't apply for a patent. And they would say, kind of like what you were saying, is like, well, how would I possibly know that? Like, yeah, I mean, I guess if they
This
taught a course in high school on patents, like, oh, that's what they should tell everyone in high school, right?
They need to
About
teach everybody in high school, even the simple, like
right.
somehow this gets missed, that like, hey folks, you're presumed to know the law. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter which area, right? You're presumed to know it. And that is such a painful reality in so many
yeah,
ways for people. Um, Talk to us
exactly.
about the people that are in the bucket of like should definitely be considering a patent versus those where you might see their stuff and be like, yeah, that's cool, but you should not be pursuing a patent.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that like the one thing that this two schools of thought about
Mm,
patents, right? If you ask anyone about patents, they'll have one of two things to say. They'll be like, well, patents are really cool. Patents are awesome. You need to get a patent if you're going to launch a product, right? Then you have other
mm,
people that will say, nah, don't bother with patents. They change one thing and then like they can get around your patent, right? And
yes.
so people have one of those two opinions. And the question is like, which of them are right? And
Mm,
the answer is they're both right at different times. And
mm,
that's, I think, the big lesson is that every patent has a scope of protection. Some patents are broad and they cover a whole new concept.
mm,
But then later on, once that concept is not new, someone else might get a patent on something like that, but just very specific in the
mm.
details. So then, just to answer your question,
So
the
is this
thing that someone would need to ask themselves is like, okay,
mm,
so if I could get a patent on this, once now I've done research and I found out like what's the closest things to it, I see what makes mine different.
mm,
So then presumably what you'd get a patent on is whatever is actually different about it, right?
that's yeah.
And then you have to ask yourself, like, okay, so this difference, if I can get a patent on that, is that going to matter? Like,
Mm,
is it going to matter to the marketplace?
yeah.
Or the customer is going to want the product because it has that little, it's release lever that like none of the other products have, right? And then are my competitors going to say, yeah, we'd love to make a product like that, but unless we can make it with that release lever, because everybody wants that release lever, like we don't want to do it.
Mm,
And we can't do it because because she's got a patent on that release lever in that product. So that's the point, is you want to
mhm,
find if that there's an overlap between the thing that makes it patentable, the thing that makes it
mm,
different, right?
mhm.
And the thing that makes it marketable, the thing that people want in the market. That's when you want to get a patent,
Yeah.
is when you've got that.
Oh, that's so helpful. The other thing that I'm wondering about, if you could answer for our listeners, is do you have to have a physical product or widget? I call them gadgets and gadgets to need a patent. Or are there other
I
folks
mean,
that you work with
to get a patent, you
to
need
get,
to have one. You need to have built one.
yeah. I mean, do you help folks in the software space, in the
Mhm.
like in the space of they're not building a physical thing?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, two things said. First is like
Mm,
sometimes people wonder, like, do I need to actually build it to get a patent on it?
mhm.
So do I need to build a physical thing? And the answer is no. As long as we could explain it with enough detail so that someone in the field could build it, then we can. Like you
Ah,
could patent an aircraft that you've never built. But if you want to say that like part of this aircraft is this anti-gravity module, then you better be able to explain how an anti-gravity module works. Otherwise, you won't be able to patent it.
mm,
So as long as you can kind of connect the dots between existing technology, you can file a patent application on something that's never been built, and that's the majority of what we do.
okay.
But then the other part, you're asking about software, right? Does it
Yep.
need to be physical? So there are a bunch of categories of what provides what's called patentable subject matter, right? It's like the right type of thing that you could patent.
Mm-hmm.
And its most functional physical things, right, will fall within one of these categories without going to too much detail on it. And there's another category of process. So you could patent a process. And traditionally, it was something like, okay, I've got a new way of refining steel,
Mm-hmm.
where wasn't necessarily anything different about the steel, but you had a new and more efficient process. It was a series of steps that someone would go through to refine steel, and that could be patented. And then somewhere around the 1990s, it became possible, or they kind of allowed you to consider software to be a process like that. And so the way that software gets
Mm,
protected is as the steps, the steps that the software goes through when it's interacting with the user or interacting between different computer systems or whatever. But yeah, process gets protected with a utility patent.
and I assume the litmus test is kind of the same. There has to be that unique component or something that makes it different and therefore protectable. Is that
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Including with the software.
There has to be something distinct.
Mm,
And yeah, without going into too much, making it
mm,
too confusing, one of the requirements is that it has to be non-obvious, which kind of means just something unexpected. Like if you just kind of put things
mm,
together in like the expected way, like, okay, maybe no one has put them together exactly like this, but it's within the range of expectations, then it's not going to be patentable. So it has to be
ah.
non-obvious. Another way to think of that is just something that's a bit unexpected.
Right, creative, right? You have to
Yeah.
be creative about it. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Um, what do you wish people knew? So I promise we'll wrap you up on time, but what do you wish people knew about patents that, I mean, aside from that very important timeline piece, right, that many people don't?
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, the thing about the timeline, about not
Mm,
about filing a patent application at an early stage so that you aren't prevented by your own public disclosure from ever getting a patent. That's probably number one, two, and three on my list. Um, the other thing though is this, it's like has to do with the value of a patent. And most people
mm,
think in terms of like, well, like the value of a patent is like, as I'm running my business, if like someone else um copied my product idea, they would take away from my sales. So if I was going to do say 200,000 a month in revenue, if someone's copying me, maybe that would drop to 150. And so then, it's worth that, not losing that 50,000 in revenue
right.
to get a patent. That's what most people think, right? But
Mm,
there's another thing which most people don't think of, which is the value when you go to sell your business.
that's right.
When you go to sell your business, having the patent on the thing that prevents competition is going to be a multiplier.
Yeah.
If you were making, just an example, $1 million in profit per year, and you didn't have a patent, someone might come along and pay you a 3-time multiple on that, or say $3 million. But if they see that you have the patent that would prevent people from coming into the market, instead of paying you 3 times, they might pay you 6 times.
Mm,
Well, but now 6 times is $6 million. That's a $3 million difference because you own the IP.
yeah.
That's where the real value of patents come. And most people don't think of that. They're thinking about the cash flow thing. Like, well, like I would lose some money if someone copied my idea, but think
Mm,
about it as an asset that will multiply the value that you get when you sell your business.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that just highlights across the board, even my belief about other types of legal support that people build into their business is looking at it as an expense versus an investment that actually
Right.
pays off, right?
Exactly.
You've just
And
highlighted.
it's an investment that always gives a big ROI if you get to exit, right? If you
Right.
get to sell your business, you will get a big ROI on the money you put into patenting, no matter what.
Mm.
Granted, not every business gets to the point where they exit or gets to the point where they sell their business. But if you do, it will be a 10 time, 100 time ROI on what you invest in IP.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
And that
Um,
goes for trademarks and copyrights too, like an IP portfolio.
Totally. Anything that becomes an asset in your business that you could sell as part of the business or siphon off and sell on its own, right? So Rich, for folks that want to connect with you, I want to be respectful of your time, even though I would love to continue the conversation and maybe we just schedule another conversation at some point. Where would you like people to connect with you or find you online?
Yeah, so I think first of all, if you want to learn more about patents, you can go to my website. I've got great resources there, goldsteinpatentlaw.com. If you want to see if it's a match to work together with my team, then there's a place there where you can set up to talk with them as well. I also would say if you want to learn more about patents, that you check out my book, the American Bar Association's Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent. If you read, it's about a 4-hour read, and if you read this, it's probably put you in the 99th percentile of other entrepreneurs in terms of how well you understand how patents fit into your business. And then, lastly, there's the podcast, Innovations and Breakthroughs, where I have great guests like you, Heather, and people who have kind of taken a path of taking something from being an idea in their head to being out there in the world. That's what I like to talk about on the podcast.
No, I
And
love it.
yeah,
Well,
that's
one of
you
the
find me.
reasons, yes, one of the reasons I'm such a fan of you, Rich, and for folks listening, this is rare. Rich is an attorney who is very good at what he does and he loves to educate, right? So he and there's no way around it. As an entrepreneur, you just have to get a certain amount of education so that you can lead your business well. And so we need people like Rich, especially on very complex, technically difficult parts of the path, to be able to educate and step in and provide that help. So Rich, I'm so glad to know you. I'm going to share all your links, including to your website, to your book, to your podcast on the show notes page. So if you're listening, pop over to legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast, find Rich Goldstein's episode there, and be sure to connect with him. Rich, what final thought would you like to leave our listeners with today?
This was fun.
It is fun. I'm so glad that we got to have a conversation, the first one
Absolutely.
on the podcast about patents, and that it was with you. So I'm really grateful
I'm
for you.
glad I'm glad to be the guy that had that conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much
Totally.
for having me.
You're welcome. Well, we will definitely be in touch. If you're listening, pop over and connect with Rich. If you are in the space of building things, creating products, including software, you need Rich on your team. All right, Rich, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.